I've gotten some feedback lately to the channel that I'm not representing people's views completely accurately. And, rather than just kind of ignore it or hide it, I want to address it, see if we can come to some kind of conclusion together. But basically, this is around kind of the portrayal that some people have in the industry. And specifically, a portrayal that the industry is dead, needs to die, will die, people should all be fired, etc. What actually has been said? What's the truth of it? Where does it all sit? And who's saying this? I'd like to kind of set the record straight from my perspective, but as always, you're welcome to kind of feed in. So here goes. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. I want to try and give as, I guess, straight talk as possible about how some of this stuff has gone down. And I want to also, represent my biases kind of front and center. Everybody, you, me, everyone has a bias of some kind. The biases are made up of our past experiences, what we love, what we dislike, and it impacts how we are as people. To say I have no biases is a ridiculous statement. Biases are made up of our history. Nobody is a blank slate that just goes into every situation completely oblivious to any connection. As human beings, we look at things and we try and connect them with what we know, what we like, what we dislike. That's how we're built. That's how the human mind works. So when it comes to comics, I absolutely have a bias, and I'll explain them. First, I love comics. It's been a big part of my life since forever. I mean, we're talking 40 years of comics for me. I've sold comics, so I've tried to make money off of comics, meaning I think a lot about how to sell them, how to market them when that goes bad. I am at odds with the publishers at many times, usually for reasons impacting that money factor. For me, there are, and because I've grown up with so many comics and I've seen so many eras of a comic, there's not a single comic creator who hasn't created a clunker, if you will. There's nobody who has a perfect track record of amazing comics. Everybody's created something poor. I did an interview that I'll talk more about in a moment, but the guy I was interviewing brought up the fact that I love John Byrne. He loved John Byrne. His work on Fantastic Four, on X-Men and Superman, and some of these other comics he did is legendary. He is a person who, make no mistake about it, had a huge impact in comics, and that can't be understated. At the same time, John Byrne went on Doom Patrol, and that run was reviled. It was I mean, seen as a complete clunker. His Next Men was pretty hit and miss. I said Next Men, not X-Men. People have gotten confused about that in the past, but it's there's always stuff that people like and dislike, and I don't believe anyone is incapable of either making a amazing comic or making a terrible comic. I think you put the right person in the right place and you give them something that really works, and you can get good stuff out of it. So I think that's kind of it shaped how I view comics and how I view the industry and how I view things. I don't get wrapped up in saying, this individual needs to be banished from comics altogether. I just say I'm going to banish myself from this individual's comics because I don't enjoy the comic. It doesn't work for me. So, I'll try and figure out how to sell it, but it's not for me. And I don't, I've said in the past, and I stand by this, a lot of people, either fans or creators, use the phrase, well, maybe it's not for you, or if you don't like it, don't buy it, as insults. That's how they mean it. But there's an underlying truth to that. Yeah, if you don't like something, you shouldn't buy it. Yeah, not every comic is for you. It's such an honest statement. It's kind of a dumb statement. Of course, not every comic is made for you. But people do use it as an insult, and that's why it's a dodgy thing to say, even though it's true. But for me, I hear the phrase, and this is getting to some of the feedback I've gotten. There has been a drumbeat over the last 2+ years. And here's where I'll irritate people, because people are always saying, you're afraid, meaning me, I'm afraid to call people out by name, by directly. And often I've gotten probably the most amount of mail that I've gotten on, just in general, is around this single topic. You, meaning me, I talk about bad things in the industry. I talk about fans kind of being obnoxious, around trolling, around some of these other things. And I don't say the word Comicsgate. I don't do videos calling out Comicsgate. Now, I've explained this in the past, and I'll explain it briefly again in the future. I'd rather just talk about the behavior, not about a group, because I think that label is incorrectly applied to all kinds of things. I'm not saying this is a great group or a terrible group. I'm saying the behaviors are either great or terrible. I think if you're harassing somebody because of their gender or sex, that's a terrible act. And I don't really care what label you put on it, because the reality is, the truth is, lots of people from lots of different groups have done that, not just one. It would be wonderful if it was just one group that was doing it, but that's just not true. There have been harassments, and you can't in one hand say harassing people is wrong, and on the other hand, pat people on the back for harassing, quote unquote, the wrong people, which happens all the time. So, that's why I haven't done it. If that bothers you, if it's unfair, if you hate it, then, I'll say the same thing that many say. You're welcome not to buy it. In this case, you're welcome not to listen. I hope you do. I try and put forward as honest a conversation as I can, and I will debate you, and I will try and argue you reasonably. If you're reasonable, I will be reasonable back. And if you have something new, I'm not afraid to say I'm wrong or to apologize. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But we have to be able to have a dialogue about it. And I don't see any value. I still don't see any value of saying the comic pros are all socialist, big, terrible people, or this one group of fans are all bigots or anything. It's unproductive. It means nothing to me. The second most common mail that I get, and I find this ironic because it's coming from 180 degrees the opposite end of the spectrum, is to say, hey, you have got, Comicsgate, you've got this group all wrong. And that's yet another reason why I try not to talk about the group, because in a group that is comprised of who knows how many members, I don't want to use blanket statements, because I'm always going to get it wrong. If I do, I am. Now, I will tell you factual things. I'll tell you that somebody who identifies as Comicsgate brags about coming on and downvoting all of my videos. Now, I don't think this is indicative of the entire group, unless Comicsgate has like one or two people in it total. It's a person who does this. And again, that's their right. Go nuts. Do what you got to do. But where some of this has come up lately, and again, speaking to my biases, over the last 2 years, there's been a continual message out that the comic industry needs to burn down, that it's over, it's bad, it needs to end, and then be rebuilt, or just, Marvel and DC are dead. There's always variations on this, and this is why it's a bit of a trap statement, because I'll say, hey, there's some people who say the comic industry needs to die, and then I'll get people coming in there saying, where is this said? Point out to me where this is said. Go find the exact tweet where this is said. Now, the reality is, if you just type in those words in Twitter, you can find all kinds of people saying that. But there's also a million variants, like Marvel must die, or DC must die, or Mags Visaggio must die, or Scott Snyder must, or whatever it happens to be, Tom King. There is this has to be burned to the ground in order for it to be rebuilt. And the other bit of logic that comes up a lot is sometimes things must be burned to the ground in order for them to be rebuilt. And I guess I'm saying that's not true. No, you do not have to burn things to the ground in order to save them. And history in comics shows us this. We've seen dramatic layoffs. In the 90s, Marvel laid off like almost 300 people, way more than DC just did. The direct market implosion has had ups and downs in the 90s and more recently. It's as absurd to say that everything is going amazingly well and perfect as it is to say everything must be burned down and destroyed. There's also been people who have said, good, these people have been fired, good. For whatever reason, this point has really gotten some people pissed off. They don't like it when I bring this up, but it is a fact. Some people have celebrated the firings of some of these people with DC. And I'm sure in the future they will do the same thing. Oh, there's my car again. They will do the same thing with Marvel. You're welcome to do whatever you want. And when I say, hey, here's my opinion on something, you're welcome to have a different opinion. In fact, I hope you do. So here's one thing that you may not hear from other comic channels, in particular, kind of the big guy. When I say the big guys, I mean the really big guys who do comic reviews and other things. I'm not talking about the people you think. I'm talking about like the Comics Explained and those kinds of folks. I'm hoping that your view of comics, your view of storylines, what you love is different from me. I don't want you to be the same as me. Now you might say, well, why? Well, because there are thousands of comics out there. I think it would be pretty boring if we all liked exactly the same stuff. So I learn far more from people who like different things from me than people who like the same things as me. Now, that may be a crazy concept, but it's true. I find more value in somebody bringing up something that I hadn't thought of than somebody echoing what I think. So when I do videos, I'm hoping that you're taking this in. Every now and then somebody goes, hey, I'm sorry to disagree with you. And my response is, don't be sorry. Disagree, please. There's nothing wrong with disagreement. But specifically, like I said, I've gotten a lot of feedback lately of hey, nobody's actually saying this. Nobody's actually saying that they hope the comic industry will die or burn down. And all I can say is, yeah, there are. Now, maybe they're not serious. Maybe they're just venting. Maybe they're saying that they don't want the whole industry to burn down, just one part of it, or maybe the people they don't like, etc., and all the rest. But I'm not making this stuff up. This stuff is out there, and it's not hard to find. Please, please, please. I don't consider it arguing or debating or having a conversation in good faith if you want to come in and say, hey, prove to me this exact thing you're saying by, showing me the tweet. If you have disagreement, go find it yourself. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a dick about it, but literally go use the search tools. They're there for you. And two, it is, if one person is saying, I hope the industry burns down, another person is saying, I hope DC burns down, another person is saying, I hope Marvel burns down, please don't say, well, nobody's saying DC burns down, and then point to the Marvel and the other one as your proof. Lots of people say lots of things. We're generalizing, so we're trying to have a conversation. That's the best we can do. And if I'm wrong, again, I will apologize. I do want to make it 100% clear that in no respect do I believe that everyone in Comicsgate is just sitting around hoping that all the women disappear and that there are no comics in the near future. That's patently not true. It's obvious it's not true, and it's ridiculous. Now, is it true that there's a handful of people who use that term and maybe consider themselves part of the group? Maybe not. I don't know. Is it true that some of those people like to cause trouble, like to troll, are not in it for the comics and just in it to kind of, stir up some drama because that's how they entertain themselves? Sure. There are absolutely some of those people. And at this point, nobody in any group, whether you've got a D or an R in your name or whatever your pronoun is, whatever any of this stuff is, you have to recognize that there are some people who are identifying as the same group as you, who are maybe out to cause trouble or maybe just out to entertain themselves and do not have the same values as you. It's true. And that's why I will continue to say, and I'll be the one man alone if I have to be, that identifying people under one label is madness. Whether it's a race, a gender, a comics group or not a comics group. I mean, I think you as an individual should be smart enough to recognize that the people you surround yourself with, the actions you do, everything else is going to change how people look at you. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better for some and worse for others. Who knows? It's your actions identify who you are. That's your responsibility as a person. And our responsibility as observers, as people, is not to overly generalize. everyone under the same label. I mean, we should be smarter than this. In 2020, we should not be devolving into being able to only understand very basic, simplistic black and white concepts. That's not comics. It's not fun. It's not community. I don't care whether that word is lame or not or whatever else. It just is. Um, I'm going to do more interviews in the future, and I'm specifically getting interviews from people from all walks of life, people that are, more comics, more, industry pros, people associated with gatekeepers. I mean, look, I want to just be straightforward. If I could get Mark Wade on this channel to interview him, I would do it. There's things, he's been in the industry for a long time. He's got a story to tell. Megs Visaggio wants to come on, I'll interview her. If I have no idea why. I mean, I would interview an Ethan Van Sciver. I'd interview a Richard Meyer. Now, both those guys have their own channels, so their interest in being interviewed by me is zero, and they've got their own deal. They've got their own message, so they don't need to be interviewed by me. But whatever, I'm happy to talk to lots of different people, and I am talking to lots of different people. I think there's stuff to learn. I think the big shocking fact that we're going to find, that you're going to quickly see, is a lot of these people share a lot of your views, whatever they happen to be, whether they're, over here supporting, a John Malin comic, or whether they're over here supporting a Kwanzaa comic. I mean, a lot of those basic views line up. Now, it doesn't mean everybody's a perfect person. I'm not saying that. It's just saying, if you're coming to this channel, you're going to hear different views. If that's going to trigger you or make you insane, I again, go to your safe space. I'm just saying, go to the place that's going to give you nice echo chamber, friendly, comfortable things for you to nod your head at, and don't wander into the dangerous territories of other thoughts. So, that's what you got. I think that I'll leave you with this. Online, it's a goofy place. We're encouraged to kind of battle, and many of the reasons why we're encouraged to battle each other is because the companies that own these social media sites benefit from our traffic. And if people are angry with each other, they tend to check their accounts more frequently. They tend to be more susceptible to advertisements, and they can be monetized. And so, the companies providing these platforms are motivated to get us to be at each other. And in addition, they're motivated to have very complex arguments, but we overcomplicate things a lot as people. If somebody is acting like an asshole, maybe they're just an asshole. They don't need to also be a socialist or a Nazi or any of these other terms. They might just be an asshole. Most people who are acting terrible are just assholes. And one way you know this is because at various times they'll switch sides from one group to the other, indicating that the underlying platform doesn't really matter to them as long as they keep being an asshole. The other common thing is there's a lot of people who are dumb. It can be as simple as that. Many of the people who get tagged with labels and we get all pissed off about, whether they're this or that, or a bigot or a ist, or any kind of these terms that love to be thrown around. Maybe the person's just an asshole or dumb or both. And asshole or dumb is a nice simple way to look at things. It doesn't need to be as complicated. We throw these labels on people. It certainly provides for some more meat to want to argue and fight about, but it doesn't really benefit anyone. It just gets everybody riled up. So for what it's worth, there you go. If you listen to all the way to the end of this, I mean, who knows? Do you care? Do you not care? I hate getting into this drama, and it's exhausting. But like I said, I get two types of emails. Either I'm being too nice to the big hate group, or I'm representing what the group's saying inaccurately, and I need to be educated as to what the group actually represents. In which case, the invitation's still out for somebody to come in and set the record straight. Still out there. I started conversations with many people. They all kind of disappeared. So you're welcome to come on and set the record straight. I will listen to you, and I will hear you out, always. Or maybe I won't post this video at all. Who knows? Leave a comment. Tell me where I'm wrong. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media. Thanks for listening.